Welcome to Remix EQ Live, where we are amplifying equity with a remix of information, interviews, and inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and today I'm broadcasting live from Savannah, Georgia, where I live. For those joining us today, please drop a greeting of choice in the comments. Let us know where you are joining from and the equity-driven work you do or aspire to do. And remember, Remix EQ Live is an experience that's meant to be shared. So I encourage you to hit the share and invite buttons and bring along your people, your network, your family, your friends, your peeps to join our Remix EQ Live community today. This season, we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. We can now connect more broadly, growing our reach and building our learning community. And while those comments are flowing in and those invitations are flowing out, I want to remind you that Remix EQ Live offers us the opportunity to connect and build community with each other around the equity-driven work being performed throughout the world. And we do this by centering the work. That is, our guests and viewers share examples of what they do in their role or position as a way to illustrate the innovative, effective, and meaningful ways they advance equity in the spaces in which they live, work, learn, and play. Throughout the show and in the comments, I invite you to also share what you do to make the world a more just place. We are approaching the end of season 7. And today's Remix EQ Live episode features Dr. Andre M. Perry, Senior Fellow and Director of the Center for Community Uplift at the Brookings Institution, and the author of not one but 2 books, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities, and Black Power Scorecard, Measuring the Racial Gap and What We Can Do to close it. Dr. Perry is a nationally known and respected commentator on race, structural inequality, and economic inclusion. Yes, he's a social justice warrior. And today we are in conversation about his recent book, Black Power Scorecard. We'll listen and learn from Dr. Perry about how he frames and measures racial gaps in wealth and power, and what he recommends in terms of policy change and collective community efforts in order to even the score and close the gap for Black Americans. Along the way, we'll be inspired to envision what it truly means for Black Americans to win, win, win. So whether you're trying to level the playing field to get in the game or in fact already playing the long game, this conversation about money, power, and respect is what you need in your life. Tune in and let us begin this conversation for change. Welcome, Dr. Andre M. Perry.
Dr. Tate, how are you?
I'm good, excited.
Good to be here. I'm in Oxon Hill, Maryland, by the way. So
Yay.
Greetings from Oxon Hill, Maryland, the DMV, as we affectionately call it.
Yes, well, we are so glad to have you tuning in from there. To start us off, I invite you to introduce yourself. And as you do, please share 1 to 2 career or personal twists and turns that have led you to your current role.
Oh, well, Andre Perry, Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institution, as mentioned, author of the new book, Black Power Scorecard. I guess, my career really began in education. Education is my home base. I actually started off looking at immigrant educational rights, in particular the DREAM Act and how undocumented students are acculturated into society. And when I was in College Park at the time, it was 2001, the DREAM Act was about to pass. And then something happened, horrible happened in September 1, that would be 9/11. And certainly the trajectory of the DREAM Act and a lot of immigration policy changed at that time. I went to New Orleans. I got my PhD from College Park. Went to New Orleans just to be a professor, went there in 2004. Another catastrophic event happened. It was Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And that's when I became fully ensconced in all things recovery. Did a lot of community development work, worked with economic development organizations. I wrote a book chapter for a Brookings publication on Hurricane Katrina. That's how I was introduced to Brookings. And then after 10 years of playing footsie with Brookings, they decided to let me know about an opportunity to become a fellow. I took that opportunity, and I've been at Brookings for almost 8 years. It's been a circuitous journey. I've been a founding dean. I've been a journalist. But at my core, I love to write. I love looking at problems differently, for solutions in particular. But that's a little bit of who I am and how I got to where I am today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate your twists and turns, in your case, marked by these catastrophic
Yeah.
incidents, right? But
Yeah.
you managed to find a way to as you were saying, like find solutions and figure out how to move forward communities. And that's a lot of great insight, which I think will come through in the conversation today as you share more about your book. So thank you so much. For those who are just tuning in, this is Remix EQ Live. We're amplifying equity through a remix of information, interviews, and inspiration. And now that you've had the chance to meet or reconnect with Dr. Andre Perry, I know you're inviting others to tune in. And of course, I invite you to interact with us. So please post comments, say hello, ask questions, share any examples or learnings as we dive into this interview. You are part of our Remix EQ Live experience. So now we center the work. This is an opportunity for us to learn from Dr. Perry about how he makes the world a more just place, specifically his data-driven and collective approaches to measuring and increasing Black power and wealth in the United States. So Dr. Perry, as a senior fellow and director for the Center for Community Uplift at Brookings Institution, how do you influence policy change that increases economic security and well-being for people across racial and geographic?
Well, at the Brookings Institution, it's world-renowned think tank. We focus on a policy that's in service to, or research that's in service to policy. And so how I influence or make change in society is by creating research projects that can hopefully influence legislation and or other policies that impact economic security and well-being. However, I think a lot of people also know me for being able to frame issues in ways that changes the conversation overall. And so whether it's my research on housing devaluation, where we found that homes in Black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, 48,000 per home cumulatively, there's about 156 billion in lost equity. That shifting, that research led to a cascade of policies all across the country. But it really just reframed the issue of discrimination. One, we saw numerically how this discrimination or bias shows up in price differences, and so that enabled people to see that many of the assets in Black neighborhoods are much more valuable than they are priced. And I've done other work just basically highlighting the strengths in Black cities, and that's generally what I want to be known for showing that this is not always a conversation about disparity, about reducing racial gaps per se. It's about improving the conditions of Black Americans by building upon the strengths that are inherent in these communities. And so for me, that's generally how I move the world. I certainly produce research that is in service to policy, but more importantly, I'm known for reframing issues to spotlight the strengths in Black communities.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you're doing that work. It's great. You're known as a reframer and an asset. Like that assets approach to the work, I think is really important and really influences how people understand and come into the work to support those types of changes that you're working toward. So thank you. It is definitely apparent in the book. So I want to move us to our next segment where for those who tune in, we love to celebrate the work of our guests, but we also like to celebrate their work. So that is anything our guests produce for others, books, online content. We've had card decks, performances, talk shows. Right? We really love to celebrate that, what they're doing and what they're putting into the world. As I think, Dr. Perry, you said how you want to make the world move, right? We want to celebrate those works. So today we are celebrating the authorship of Dr. Perry and his book, Black Power Scorecard, measuring the racial gap and what we can do to close it. In this book, Dr. Perry offers us a framework, a lens to examine the current state of Black America with respect to wealth and power and many other topics. But today, that's what we're focused on. And while his analysis informs and builds our knowledge about factors that increase or decrease wealth and power, it is his many examples of collected wealth and power building among Black people and communities across the country that are truly inspirational. So we're going to dig in and discuss Dr. Perry's book, Black Power Scorecard, for the remainder of the episode. So go ahead and click the link to purchase while you watch and listen. Well, congratulations.
Hey, I'm excited. I'm getting to tour all across the country. So also look me up. You can always hit me up on social media at Andre Perry EDU. So hit me up there, or I'm certainly on LinkedIn. But I'm traveling all over the country talking about the book. So it's just an exciting time.
Yes, this is exciting. We'll have to publish your book tour schedule after the show so people can check it out and find you easily. So why did you write Black Power Scorecard, and who should read it?
Well, I wrote Black Power Scorecard, and it's the scorecard part in the name suggests. I want people to be able to see where Black people are progressing on key dimensions of our lives. In the wake of or after George Floyd's killing, we all remember the summer 2020, the summer of unrest. We remember the slogan, Black Lives Matter. And there were a lot of feelings around that phrase, some positive, some negative. For me, as a researcher, I saw the research question in that slogan. I saw, for me, it's interpretation of what are the most important factors on life expectancy. And the reason why I thought that was an important question to ask is because at the time, we were very focused on the factors that harm Black people. I wanted to look at what helps us thrive. Reason being, you have a much more robust, comprehensive sort of policy agenda that you can then address. So it moves from just looking at what harms us and to really what helps us thrive. A few years later, 2022, my colleague, Jonathan Rothwell, and I developed the Black Progress Index, and it's an index that it was an attempt to look at find the places where Black people are living the longest, based around that question, what are the most important factors on life expectancy? And we used a machine learning algorithm, lasso regression for those out there who are interested in research, and we sifted through dozens of databases, everything from FBI data, Federal Reserve data, IRS data, Facebook data, you name it. This machine learning algorithm allows us to just filter through all these databases, and we landed on the most influential or correlations or strongest correlations with life expectancy. And some of them will not surprise: income, home ownership, business ownership, air pollution, family. So a lot of them are very clear. And what I'm doing with them is all around the country, we're having kitchen table conversations around these very basic issues. Because when it comes to one of the negative predictors, One was children not living with their father, and so I have a whole chapter on marriage and what predicts for marriage, and we can talk about that. I talk about crime and gun fatalities as another negative driver of life expectancy in our communities. But throughout the book, I highlight positive solutions that are happening all across the country, in places, some places that are thriving, some places that they're building upon these activities to thrive. So it's a phenomenal book. It's data rich, but it also just tells a lot of stories of individuals and communities building up their places, improving the conditions that produce life expectancy.
Thank you. Yes, I love it. Yeah, this we dropped in the link for the Black Progress Index. When you read the book, you'll see reference to that throughout. You'll, like Dr. Perry said, there's a lot of evidence in there, but I think it's truly the examples that make it come to life. I think for those who are not living their life in that data space. And I appreciate both not only like the asset-based approach to this work, but also that highlighting of different communities across the country. It really allows for us to think about, even though we have a national agenda around, improving Black Americans' lives, that it looks different in different locations across the U.S. And it's something that we can learn from each other as we're moving forward this work. So I did want to ask you if you could share an example or one or two examples from your book that illustrate collective wealth building in Black communities.
Oh, yeah. I'll spotlight the work of Lanier Richardson. He is a developer who leads the organization Chicago Trend. Most people don't know this, but 80% of all commercial real estate is owned by just 1% of individuals or families in the United States. And when you're talking about wealth and real estate, about 43% of all wealth generated from real estate comes from the commercial side. So in order to improve wealth among African Americans, you got to talk about ownership of commercial real estate. But because we have lower wealth overall, it's hard to get in that game. You need money to get in that game. So throughout the book, I talk about different cooperatives and different collective ways to get in the game. And in this case, it's to own commercial real estate. So what Lanier Richardson is doing, he's using these crowdfunding platforms that the Security Exchange Commission approved of a few years back, and it enables people with as little as $1,000 to invest in various commercial real estate developments. And so he literally was going around door to door in Baltimore to identify people who didn't necessarily know they could own a shopping mall, but now they're owning a shopping mall. And why that's important in Baltimore, it's the Edmondson Village shopping mall. But why it's important in Baltimore, that it's in Baltimore, redlining began in Baltimore. Many of the racial housing covenants began in Baltimore. So in fact, he found that there was a racial covenant in that mall. So in that area. So what he's doing is really challenging the years and years of racist policy and creating, instead of having exclusive policies, creating more inclusive ones that is really just changing the vibe and energy in a place. So now the capital that is represented by the crowdfunding is not large. It still represents only like 3 to 5% of the total, using the jargon, capital stack, the kinds of capital that goes into the development of that mall. But while the dividends or returns are smaller in nature, you're creating owners who are invested in this place. So they're going to defend it, they're going to protect it, going to patronize it. And so for me, it's a very great way to engage communities overall, but also help to shift the wealth profiles of communities overall.
Thank you for that, sharing that example. I had, I don't know, it's always great to hear something that you hadn't heard before, right? Or read something, and just really think about how you take a shopping strip and use that as a space to build community investment, like from actual residents and start that ownership pathway. So I appreciate those types of examples. And there are many of these examples throughout the book. So I encourage you to purchase and read this book and really start to build your database or your repertoire with these different strategies and approaches, and maybe even bring them to your local community. I wanted to ask a question around business ownership. And so oftentimes business ownership is frequently cited as a pathway toward building Black power and wealth. And then I thought you raised some interesting points in the book around that. And so for those like organizations or entities that are supporting business ownership via like programming or policy or investment, what key factors should they consider in their work?
Yeah, throughout the book, I reference business, and one of the things early on I talk about business for Black people can't be just about being a better capitalist. That the businesses that we own, the kinds of businesses that we own, should not extract wealth and opportunity from our communities. I mean, we have a number of smaller businesses, everything from check cashing businesses to rent to own scams, essentially. There are a lot of businesses that are predatory in nature. And so one of the things I first call on is to say, hey, let's not just get rich per se on the backs of our community. The other thing that I certainly emphasize is the need for employer firms. When it comes to wealth development, it's employer firms with more than one employee. Those are the kind of businesses that really drive wealth creation. And so whatever business you're into, we should strive to become employers. Black people represent about 14% of the population, U.S. population, but only are 2.7% of employer firms. And so for me, but let me be clear, that 2.7% has increased by 50% since 2017. So there's momentum when it comes to Black business ownership that we need to acknowledge and celebrate. But to get to that 14% to represent the population, we're going to have to talk about mergers and acquisitions, starting or buying existing firms. So it's not just about starting a firm on your own. We should really think about building up businesses, scaling them, or buying businesses with employees already. So I have a long, healthy chapter on that. Guy by the name of Kalen Hodges, who's in St. Louis, who started off mowing lawns and ended up being one of the best, the strongest logistics firms in St. Louis. And it's a great story of how entrepreneurs just build upon their businesses to scale it. And so I'm really excited about telling more of his story when I'm on the road. And so it's just a really heartwarming story of how businesses and entrepreneurs are growing throughout the United States, sometimes in spite of policy. And so my goal is to drive investment towards the kind of entrepreneurs that are worthy of investment. This is, in the introduction, I do address DEI and affirmative action. One of the things I say is, DEI and affirmative action have never been the goals. They were expedients towards the goal. We want to be mainstream in the capital markets. We want mainstream access into home ownership, but we need the policy and legislation to reflect who we are and our state in the United States. So, so for me, I see many of these stories of being a seed for policy moving forward. What can we learn about these individuals that we can then codify into policy later on?
Yeah. Just for as a follow-up, like what type of, like just an example, like what type of policy would be in place that would help us like achieve these goals of Black businesses that are scaling and have many employees? Like what is a policy that could help us move toward that direction?
I talk about in two fronts, on housing and on business developments, special purpose credit programs. And these are programs that allow banks to adjust your underwriting practices so that you can give entrepreneurs or potential homeowners a mortgage or a loan, so that they can get the capital that they need. We have hundreds of thousands of people who are doing everything right, but they just don't have the capital to get into that home. They don't have the down payment. They don't have the collateral. So special purpose credit programs, while they are currently in existence, they don't have to be special. They can be mainstream. And so those are the kind of things that I recommend throughout the book. That here are some solutions that we have. Let's scale them. Let's codify them. Let's make them into policy so that we can get the kind of continue the momentum that we have in across different sectors.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I just want to underscore, like, think of the book as a way to gather some strategies, like take back to your team or whoever that you're working with, and kind of, I think, as you said to me, like reframe how you're thinking about some of the challenges or goals that you have in your community, because throughout in every chapter, there really are examples that you could take one or two things from and really keep pushing the thinking that you're already doing in the work that is happening. So it's really great. And I appreciate the point about if you're starting businesses, of course, scaling them, but also starting businesses that edify our Black community and push us forward. I mean, I think it really ties into this whole idea is that we are trying to live longer as Black people and enjoy.
One of the things I talk about early on is that we talk about power, and oftentimes we don't define it. And for me, ultimately, power is having the ability to live out your natural life. And in many places we are. So one of the goals of the book was to show that we are thriving in many places. It's, what I don't do is compare Black people to white people in the aggregate, because it really masks the progress that is happening at the local level. So for me, I measure Black people to Black people and see where we're doing well and why we're doing well. But we are thriving in a lot of places in the United States, and we need to celebrate that. We need to take note of why we are improving conditions on the ground, and those civic actions can be exported to other places, so that we can eventually get to a place where more and more people are thriving.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think for almost everyone I've ever interviewed on this show, when we, talk about what, across different disciplines, but it always comes through is that but we're doing this work so that Black people can have more joy or feel more well. And I think like your discussion of living a long natural life or being able to live out your natural life, it really just connects us that we're here to make change and we want to move the world or make the world more just, but it's so that we want to enjoy it as we do it, right? Because that is life, but also celebrate it. And I think that just adds to the spirit that even in this work that can be arduous and take a lot emotionally, that the goal is still joy, the goal is still celebration, the goal is still living. And you see that even in discussions of public policy and land and property.
I want communities where people can thrive. That's the highest level of well-being from a research standpoint. And that has to include recreation, rest, home ownership, business ownership. All these things have to work together. And so, so I certainly work hard, but I also play hard. So you definitely need to live a full and comprehensive life, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. We have a question from Brianna. Dr. Perry, your work reframes how we value Black lives and community. What are some real ways young people passionate about justice can start making an impact, even without institutional power?
One of the chapters I focus on is education. And so when I say young, when I'm hearing young people, I'm going to go as early as elementary, high school. There was a engineer by the name of Calvin Mackey who has an organization called STEM NOLA, and he allows children to do STEM activities out of school on the weekends. As he says, that every Black boy is introduced to a football or basketball before he turns 5. Why can't we put a science instrument into every kid's hand before 5? And that's what he's doing. And so what I've learned from that is that we do need to make communities educationally rich. That chapter is called "Community is a Good School." I've done a lot of work in education, and I've heard time and time again the assumption, or actually the words people say, like, if we could only fix the schools, everything will be all right. And the reality is kids don't live in schools. They live in communities. They live with families, and we got to make sure those communities are empowering and rich, and educational beyond the school walls. And that's what they're doing. But I also talk a lot about making change in the built environment. And so from building out museums that reflect our culture and our assets, to building out shopping malls. There's lots of things that young people can do, because the book is really emphasizes on collective action. So we do need young, old, middle-aged. I'll consider myself middle-aged. No, I am middle-aged. I don't know why I'm trying to fool myself, but we all need to work on these issues together. So that's what I think young people will see in the book, that, oh, there's room for me in a lot of these strategies.
Yes. Yes, no, I agree. You're speaking all my languages about the people and out of school and STEM. Just happy, and then the collectiveness. Like, if when young people can see their place in making change in their community, like, our future will definitely be better, because it will keep going. So I'm excited for that. And Gloria Wesley, she thought it was a great question, and she said, "Talk about it, Dr. Perry."
And in one of the subjects in the book, Kalen Hodges, I emphasize him because he's a young man, business owner, doing the thing. And I also wanted to put him in the book to represent what young people are doing on the business front. They're making significant strides on the business front, and we need to acknowledge their work. So I think young people will find younger readers from high school all through college, that they're represented in this book.
Yes. Oh, thank you. So we can't talk about land and property and justice without talking or discussing reparations.
Yeah.
And I love that you have a chapter in your book titled 40 Acres and a Mall. That makes me very happy, where he talks about the example from Trend that you spoke about earlier. But in a different chapter titled Reparations Go to DC, you present examples of reparation demands and efforts at local, state, and national levels. Why is a strategic multi-level approach to reparations critical for increasing Black power in the United States?
There's an argument that it's not necessarily an argument or debate, but there's a lot of feelings about what reparations should look like, where it should come from. There's a school of thought that reparations can only come from the U.S. government, a federal reparations plan. And there are some of us, including me, that believe that reparations should be claimed for any egregious act of discrimination against a group of people at the federal, state, or local level. A claim could be made. Damages should be tallied. And so for me, I fall on the side of local reparations. I think that from a national perspective, it's much harder to get to reparations. Starting at the national level, strategically, I believe that reparations should come from local communities, and we're seeing this in Evanston, Asheville, Maryland, other places are talking, or not just talking, they're creating reparations plans. Get this kind of momentum on the ground, eventually it will reach Capitol Hill, and we're going to learn from it. We've seen states take on this with different levels of success. The California was the first big state to, or first big effort to do reparations. Those policies eventually fell flat before they went to the governor's office for signing, largely because the price tag. And so another thing I say, hey, we have individuals who are actually subjected to discrimination now, who can lay claim to some type of reparations. And we have examples, and they're around the environmental injustices that impact them. And so I tell the story of people in Houston being forced to move or from a place, and showing how we can and do have reparative policies, but we just need to find those examples so that people can see, oh, this is okay, this is right, this is just. And for me, those examples at the local level are very powerful, and they will eventually lead to change at the federal level.
Well, thank you. And yes, if you check out that chapter, you'll see several examples that I think can inspire change that's happening in your community. And I think what's important here is, with all the examples in the book, are like lessons that can be learned from them, and figuring out how to adapt them to your current space and situation. So as we come to a close, we love when our guests drop knowledge and inspiration on us, which you have certainly done, Dr. Andre M. Perry. Thank you for sharing with us about Black Power Scorecard. You've offered us a framework, or you've reframed the Black America with respect to wealth and power for us. You've given us language and measures, especially thinking about living out your natural life as a Black person, as we start to think about how we want to contribute to making the world a more just place. So we would love for you to drop just one more piece of inspiration on us before we close out. So as you reflect on writing and now speaking about your book, Black Power Scorecard, what are you most inspired by, and how is this inspiration influencing your next steps?
Oh, I mean, there's no question. I'm inspired by the many doers who are making our world a better place. I have the great fortune of meeting individuals who are working in community, in cities, doing powerful things. I wish I could tell their stories all the time. I wish I had the time and the space to do so, but I'm really encouraged by the doers. You know, when reporters ask the question, do you have hope for society? I do, because I see the doers, the teachers, the engineers, the hotel workers who are really making our lives better. And so I'm inspired every day. I get to go out and meet different people. So that's what's inspiring me, the people who are doing work. And I must say that when the other reason why I don't always compare Black people to white people in the aggregate, because we need to see the evidence of that work being done in community, and how it is improving our lives. And so that's my job, to make sure that I honor the hard work and dedication that is going out, that is happening all over the country. So I stay inspired because of that. So, and thank you. You're an inspiration. Keep moving, keep pushing.
No, thank you. No, I thank you for sharing that. Yes, it is. We love that you love your job because your job's awesome. You really are highlighting and sharing all the good things that we need to really keep us moving in I think our personal lives as we, continue to try to thrive, but also in the work that many people who are in this community are doing. Shayla Graham Brock, hello. She says, thank you for this positive and motivating discussion. Hope is what keeps us moving forward through all that is currently going on. Yes, thank you for sharing and tuning in, and I appreciate your message. Yes. So I just have a few announcements before we close out. Thank you, Dr. Andre Perry, for accepting the invitation to speak about what matters most to you and what inspires you most. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to listen and learn from you about how and why you've chosen to make the world a more just place. We'll be back on May 9th for our season 7 finale, and I'll be back with the Community Reflections episode where I'll show up in the stream without guests, but in community with you to hold space for us to reflect together. As social justice warriors, we understand that pause and reflection is necessary for us to do lives-changing work effectively. So during this episode, we are going to discuss different strategies for positioning ourselves with communities as listeners and learners. So be sure to tune in on LinkedIn and YouTube, and also like and share our upcoming shows and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, as we close out season 7, we have created a substantial and inspirational body of work. We have 50 plus episodes for you to tune into, and we have curated them into playlists for your watching and listening pleasure. So if you like today's show and you were vibing with what Dr. Perry was saying, be sure to check out our Remix EQ Live playlist on our YouTube channel. We have the Entrepreneurship and Economic Empowerment playlist, and we also have a Critical Perspectives playlist, which presents several different frameworks for understanding equity and justice. So this one joins right in. I also invite you to view my recent TEDx talk entitled Building Community to Make the World a More Just Place, which is inspired by all my conversations on Remix EQ Live. So be sure to visit our webpage for episode announcements, recordings, more information. Find ways to support Remix EQ Live through a love offering or purchasing any of our merch, like our notebooks or our message tees. And while you're on the show's webpage, please be sure to poke around my website and learn more about my business, Blue Knowledge, which advances equity in schools and communities through collaborative research, inclusive evaluation, and equity-driven professional and community learning. And I just saw Trish Lindo, and I just want to say hi. And she says, thank you so much for this conversation. We have to keep our spirits up. So I just wanted to say hello. It's been a long time. I always get to see people, even though we're not like seeing them, I still feel it. So you can also follow us on LinkedIn and the Blue Knowledge YouTube channel, as well as subscribe to our newsletter. And of course, you can connect with me in these digital streets. Thank you, Remix EQ community, for your encouragement, your engagement, and of course, your rally, which is how we recognize, appreciate, learn, love, and take care of you as you work to make the world a more just place. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and this is Remix EQ Live, and we will see you next time.